Welcome back to Quest for Truth. Today we are starting a brand new series looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon later in his life. The main idea of the book is answering the question, what is the point of life? The goal for this study is to look at a chapter each week. So let's jump in right at the beginning. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 1. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. In this short introduction to the book, Solomon identifies himself as the author by his title. He calls himself the preacher, or the teacher, depending on the translation. The wisest man in history, excluding Jesus, begins his teaching. Verse 2 says, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." The word vanity here means futile or meaningless. Nothing holds any meaning in itself. This sounds like a very materialistic argument. However, there is a slight difference. As Solomon goes on to point out, nothing holds inherent meaning, so therefore the meaning must be outside of material things. Solomon spent his life with all the amenities possible at the time, but found that they held no meaning. Verses 3 through 7 say, "What advantage does a man have in all his work which he does under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Also, the sun rises and the sun sets, and hastening to its place, it rises there again. Blowing towards the south, then turning towards the north, the wind continues swirling along, and on its circular courses the wind returns. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flows, there they flow again. No matter what we do, the days keep moving. The days become years, and years become generations. In a fleeting moment, we are gone, and the next generation takes our place. The earth keeps spinning, and the wind too continues to blow no matter what." And in one of my favorite lines here, "All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. No matter how much water the rivers put into the oceans, they never fill." The job is never done. The work continues and is never completed. After hard work, progress isn't made. Then, verse 8, "All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing." Man is never satisfied in the material things. They leave us wanting more. Apart from God, there is no hope of having a fulfilled life. It is but a tiring work, a spinning of the wheels, striving much, but gaining nothing in the end. Even as Christians, we can live life like this is the case. Work, 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 lose focus on what truly matters, and then we'll ask God why we aren't content. Only God can satisfy us. Then we get to one of the most well-known phrases from Ecclesiastes in verses 9 and 10. "That which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done, so there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one might say, 'See, this is new, already it has existed for ages, which were before us'?" There is nothing new under the sun. Again, looking at the world without God, this is true. Not only do the natural processes repeat themselves, but man continues in the same manner. Apart from God, man seeks power, prestige, and wealth at any cost to others. Throughout history, we see the occurrences of similar events. Nations rise up and nations fall. The powerful seek more power. Virtually every nation has enslaved others to do the hard work that is never completed. Only with God do we see good rather than evil, freedom rather than slavery, life rather than death. Yet we have left history behind. In verse 11, we see that there is no remembrance of earlier things, and also of the latter things which will occur. There will be for them no remembrance among those who will still come later. This is echoed in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 7 as well. "Know this first of all, Then in the last days mockers will come with their mocking, following after their own lust, and saying, Where is the promise of this coming? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all continues, just as it was from the beginning of creation. For when they maintain this, it escapes their notice that by the word of God the heavens existed long ago, and the earth was formed out of water, and by water, through which the world at that time was destroyed, being flooded with water. But by his word the present heavens and earth are being reserved for fire, kept for the day of judgment and destruction of ungodly men. Forgetting the earlier things doesn't refer to history at large necessarily, but the working of God within history. The scoffers that Peter mentions fail to remember that God created the world and that God judged the world with the flood. He continues that these people, in their ignorance of the past, are walking into the final judgment. Our world is full of people that claim to be scientists and make up all kinds of stories about the beginning of the earth. They claim that God is not necessary for the creation of time, space, and matter. The Big Bang solves all of their problems. Nothing exploded, then everything began to exist. The absurdity of this claim is only possibly outdone by the refusal to accept that there was a worldwide flood. The existence of fossils, for example, implies rapid burial of animals. Localized fossils fields could be explained by local floods, yet fossils found on top of mountains, such as Mount Everest, require another explanation. The so-called experts would say that the continents moving ever so slowly pushed what was once the bottom of the ocean to extreme heights. The problem with this, of course, is that rapid movement would be necessary to manage such a feat. The flood makes sense of mountains and sea fossils on them, but for the scoffers, ignoring the obvious is essential to remove God. They strive to make the most of their limited days here on earth, but then they face eternal punishment before God. Solomon says that the things that happen later will be forgotten as well. A lot has happened in the almost 3,000 years since Solomon wrote these words, but nothing as important as Jesus' first coming. Solomon would not have known the exact events. However, he, like the rest of the Jews, awaited the coming of the Messiah. As such, the refusal to believe in the Messiah may have been one of the things that Solomon is directly referring to here. To ignore the Creator and the Judge is one thing, but to ignore the one who came to free the guilty is another. To ignore Christ's free gift of life and rather live in the meaninglessness of the world without hope is a sad reality. They exist fully in the meaninglessness that Solomon portrays in verses 2 through 11. In verses 12 through 18, Solomon turns his attention to wisdom. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, Behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind was observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And I set my mind to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I realized that this also is striving after wind, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increased pain. From 1 Kings chapter 12, we know that Solomon was given great wisdom by God. His wisdom exceeded those who came before and all those who followed. So when Solomon turns his investigation to wisdom, we can trust his conclusion. The conclusion is that wisdom, without the knowledge of God, fails to solve the problems of life. Just like everything else, even the wisest man will never be satisfied. There will always be another problem, and that's the real problem, their endless supply. But Proverbs 9:10 says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. To start wisdom apart from God is the wrong start. It's not really wisdom. True wisdom comes from God, and any attempt to solve life's problem without God falls short. Because without God, even the wisest answer results in more problems. Because the biggest problem will always be man, our sinfulness. But God gave the answer to that problem, Jesus. He not only took our punishment, but he gave us a perfect standing before God. He gave us power over the sins that entangle us. And ultimately, he has given us a new, perfect existence in which we will walk with him. When the day comes that Christ returns, we will be made new, perfectly in the image of Christ. Until that day, we live in a world that is very anti-Christ. Here and now, we stand for Christ, repent our sins, and await his return. Well, thank you for tuning in to the first episode of this series in Ecclesiastes. Next week, we'll be looking at the second chapter of the book, and I'll see you then.